Hello everyone and welcome to the live mapping session. I'm Remy and this hairy fellow, as you can see here, is my little boss Jack. Doesn't like to be held too much, so he's going to run away in a few seconds. But until then, enjoy. So, as I said, welcome everyone. Today, as announced, I'll be talking to you a little bit about dungeon tiles. I chose the title dungeon tiles because that's one of the common things you want to build tiles for, but these kinds of tiles can be used for cities, for modern maps, for battle maps, and for all kind of other kinds of maps. So it's not really just about dungeons. But let us just jump into this and have a look. And I have an example map prepared here to get us started. So, documents. I have this little tile. So this is an example of a dungeon tile. What do I have here? Well, as you can see, it's a small squarish room. It has, in this case, 4 exits and one on each side, like this. And the idea about things like a dungeon tile is that you can, for example, print them out. You make a bunch of different tiles, you print them out, and during a game session you can build up a random dungeon on your table by just placing these next to each other. Or you can export them as images and use them in any program on your computer, including a virtual tabletop, and basically lining them up in the tabletop or on the program on the computer. Or lastly, you could even make these into symbols in Campaign Cartographer 3+ itself and start just building a dungeon inside of Campaign Cartographer using these tiles as symbols, which you just smack down for easy building of a dungeon. So if we start looking a little bit about on the dungeon I have made right here. It's an example of one dungeon tile. I already showed you it has 4 exits. But of course, we don't always want to be that limited when we are making dungeon tiles. Not all tiles should be able to match up with all tiles, because that makes things very, very limited. If I needed that functionality, it would mean that every single tile would need to have these exact properties with 4 exits and basically just a very small space. So I don't think that's a limitation we should set for ourselves. But when we're talking about dungeon tiles, it's important to set some limitations so we can make a set of tiles where at least a bunch of them will be fitting together in any configuration. And to be able to do that, we need to have some rather strict guidelines. Where are these tiles allowed to meet, for example, with doors? Because if I make one tile which has doors in the middle like that, and another tile which has a door 1 step up, and another tile which has another door 1 step up like that, they won't fit together when we try to plug them together. So we need to have some kind of standard for doing this. And the best way of doing this is to actually develop a template for doing this, which allows us to basically draw up in a set of pre-defined configurations. I'd like to call attention to one thing about this map right now, and it might be difficult to see on the stream, especially since the effects are on and the grid are kind of light. So let me turn off sheet effects for a moment. And you can count the grid squares as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So this is a 9 by 9 square map. I don't know if 9 is an ideal size or not, but one important property is that I have chosen to make it odd. 9 tiles, because that means I can place a 5-foot opening in the middle. This middle position here is often very useful when we are starting to use dungeon tiles, because the middle is one of the more natural join points between these tiles when you place several next to each other. So you want to be able to utilize that middle spot. So by making this size odd, I can have one in the middle. Of course, if we want to go for 10-foot wide corridors instead of 5-foot wide, as I have opted for here, then we should probably go for an even number, because then you will have a corridor which is 2 squares next to each other. I'm using standard role-playing imperial square sizes here, which is 5-foot squares, obviously. But this is kind of the first rule we need to make for ourselves. How large should these middle connectors be? Should it be 5-foot or 10-foot? I'm going for 5-foot for my dungeons here. And one of the reasons I'm doing that is that, well, often you see in battle maps and things like different dungeon maps for role-playing purposes, I know a lot of corridors are often 10-foot wide, but that's also very often due to an artificial restrictions, because they want 2 people to stand side by side on the grid and things like that. 5-foot doesn't offer the same opportunity, so some people might feel that 5-foot is making it a bit too tight, basically. So it's kind of a bit up to you and your game as well, but it's just something you need to keep in mind. If you want 5-foot openings like this, use an odd size. If you need 10-foot openings, use an even size, and you're off to a good start. So I have this lovely map here now. This is basically my first tile. There is only one thing wrong with this tile right now, and that's that my walls are extending out from the floor. If I want to put multiple of these next to each other, this won't really do. I try to just copy one of these. Do it, and just go to turn off snap for this example, and I can always put it something like this, and we'll see. Oops, I think I have a huge screen on this one. See, hide the screen. Did I do something wrong? Let me just do this again. You know, it's always on the live stream. You either do something weird, something wrong, or whatever. I think I know what I did wrong, actually. Instead of pressing Ctrl R to redraw the map, I pressed Ctrl Z to undo. I'm using undo a lot, so it's but it's these kind of small silly mistakes you often make. But as you can see, if I try to place these next to each other again, get these small weird holes in the middle where the walls are supposed to be, or sorry, where the floors are supposed to be meeting them. So I kind of need to get rid of the outer walls, or the outer part of the walls. And in Camping Cartographer 3+, that's what we have the screen for. So let me just add a screen to this map. For those that are not familiar, a screen is something we use in Camping Cartographer, which is a white polygon, which covers up the parts that are outside the map. And Joe added some nice new commands in the last version of Camping Cartographer. I wrote about them on the blog. But if I just type color auto, it automatically adds a screen to my drawing, like that. And there is one little issue which I've already reported to the developer, because right now my screen looks horrible weird. The reason for that is that the screen actually picks up the line width which I have specified here. So let me just change the line width to 0, which is the sensible for a screen. Remember that in Camping Cartographer, if the line width is greater than 0, it means that you get a hollow entity where the lines outlining the entity are of this size. But if the line width is 0, you get a solid filled entity, like this. So this is basically my beginning for a beautiful dungeon tile. You can see that now, why are the outer walls so thin compared to the inner walls? And the reason for that is simply that, well, once you put several of these next to each other, let's do that. And let me copy it again. Let me see. This will be a little weird in Camping Cartographer because, as you all know, the wall is already hidden beneath the screen. It's not away. So I'm just going to copy it, minus the screen. Snap, I think. Do it. Copy from here to here. And let's just enjoy that a little bit without redrawing. Now you can see, once two of these tiles are placed next to each other, then the joining wall is perfect. And this is the main idea here. And this is why the joining wall is thin. Right now you can't see the screen actually, so all walls look back to the thick version. But the point is that when you join the two up against each other, you will have the same thick wall. If the outer wall had appeared the same thickness as the inner walls, then you would have these joining walls when you join two tiles against each other being twice the size of the inner walls, which is not what you want. So let me just remove this again and go back to my drawing. So now there are a couple of things I want to do with this one to prepare us for making dungeon tiles. So I have already made the first ones ready to use, but a good idea here is to actually take this into a template and make a template from it so we can easily make as many tiles as we want. So making a template is actually going to be my first step here. But this template should have some guidelines, some help lines to help me draw this. So I'm actually going to I'm gonna add a sheet called guides. Put that on top of everything. And I like to have a layer as well, guides. So, as we already discussed, I want to be able to have doors in the same place in all of them. Not all the tiles need to have doors in these positions, but I should know where to put my doors. So I'm going to a standard 0 width line, and I'm going with a nice green color. These are guidelines, so this will not be in the final image, so some bright lines are always good. So I'm actually just going to take the line tool, and I'm gonna draw myself a couple of lines. As you can see, I'm basically creating guidelines going from door to door. These layers, thank you, I forgot to actually change the layer. It helps not just creating it, but actually making it active layer. And just change properties on my nice little lines here to put it to the guides layer, like this. Thank you, Vavan. So as you can see, what I've done is basically placed a set of guidelines where my doors are supposed to go, so I know where they are on every single one I make. But there is one more thing about doors. It gets a little bit boring if these are the only option. Now, the more option I make for doors in such a map, the larger the chance is that 2 tiles are not going to fit and I need to find another tile. So the more options for doors I put in, the more different tiles I need to make. But I'm just going to prepare for that. So I'm gonna pick another color, the purple. And, well, where are we going to put the doors? I think I'm just going to make this an alternate location for doors. So the green are the center lines, the purple are the alternate door lines, where I can also place a door. So by having these guidelines in place, I know that when I place a door or a hole in the wall, it doesn't have to be a door actually, it just have to be a hole in the wall. But when I use these predefined positions, I know that all doors will line up, or at least as long as I use the same, but I won't accidentally have a door which is 5 foot off or something like that. But of course I have a couple of positions, so not all tiles will fit with all tiles, but that's just fine. We don't want that. That's far too limiting. So we are starting to get things in place. Now, since this is going to be a template, I really don't want to have any symbols in here. So let me just erase all the symbols. I can use entity type and take the symbol references out. It's all the symbols. And I think I want to just delete all the walls as well. We can choose by layer. And walls. Do it. And I have this path thing as well. Like this. Now we are starting to getting somewhere in developing our template for these dungeon tiles. As you saw, I started with a drawing first. I like to start with a drawing. It gives me kind of an indication what I need, how things are supposed to look, and where to actually put my guidelines. If I'd started just with this blank background like this, I might not have thought where to place them. But by making that first tile first, I got a bit of an image in my mind how this should look. So I'm now going to draw the wall around around the map, I want to place a pre-drawn wall, which I can just punch holes in. And I think I'm just going to do this manually, not using a drawing tool. They are 2 foot wide is my chosen wall width. I'm using the tiled marble in my example here. And of course, I'm including a floor with my drawing here, because it's better to have a starting floor, but you can just as well drop a new floor, draw a polygon on top of that floor if you want a dungeon tile with a different floor. So there's no reason to be too bothered that there's an existing floor. So I'm just going to actually use the box tool, I think, and just draw a wall around. So there we go. Did I hide that? No, let's see. Yeah, of course. I chose to draw the walls myself instead of using the tool, and I forgot to change the layer and the sheet, which is why the walls now are on top of my color or my screen. So again, just gonna use change properties. How can I pick up my wall now? I can click on it, but that is going to actually select a lot of other things. But again, use the selection properties, and I'm gonna select by fill style, and we're gonna select these tiled marble fill style. Okay, that seems to have selected the lines as well. They happen to have that fill style, but let's do a combine knot and select the lines like this, and I'm just gonna change the layer to walls, and the same with the sheet. There we go. Now we can see the walls are casting the proper shadow as well. I'm not really sure if I want this kind of shadow in my dungeon tiles, but I'm not going to mess too much. But we could instead, instead of a wall shadow, we could perhaps have a stronger black glow at 25 with the one. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, we get a strong black glow around the walls instead of these directional shadows. I think this is what I'm going to go for right now, and be happy with that one. But yeah, either one works. It was just this shadow was a little bit overwhelming. So I think things are basically placed correctly. So the final things I'm going to do now is that I'm going to go to the layer, and I'm gonna switch it to something else, for example the walls as default, and I'm going to set the guide layer as frozen so I don't accidentally mess with the layers. I'm also going to set the hex square grid as frozen. I did show you the grid earlier, but again on the YouTube this weak grid might not be too visible. You can see the black lines, and also the guidelines are covering the grid quite a lot, but when you are actually working yourself you should see that grid quite fine. But I don't want to accidentally select it, so now they are frozen. For example, if I take the erase, you can see I cannot select neither the guidelines nor the grid, because a frozen layer, entities on a frozen layers are not actually are not actually selectable for most purposes. You can select them for information. If I do, for example, a list, I'm able to actually select them, but not for things that change things, like the arrays. So that's fine. Sue says I should make the glow even wider, so I could of course do that. And a little bit more of a glow. But this first part now is developing the template, and I think I'm getting pretty happy with the template. I don't think I have forgotten anything too important right now. But so far it's still just a map, so I need to make it into a template. And in Camping Cartographer 3+, this is very simple, because a map or a template or a symbol catalog, they are actually the same thing, just with the different extensions. There are no difference between these things. It's more what they are made to be used as, but a map can be used as a template or a symbol catalog or whatever if you want to. But by giving it the right name and putting it in the right place, you can ensure that it's easy to get a hold of. So I'm going to do File, Save As, and I'm going to change it to a Camping Cartographer FCT template. So now it's going to be saved as a template. I don't want the template to live in my maps directory. It should be live along with Camping Cartographer template files. So I'm going to my drive to see program data, Pro Fantasy, CC3+, templates, and this is a dungeon template. So I'm just going to give it a name. I could name it tile, but since this is a 45 by 45 tile, I did count up the squares for you earlier, and I also told you that the squares were 5 foot, so 9 squares of 45, or sorry, 9 squares of 5 foot should be 45 foot. So this is a 45 by 45 tile. I'm just gonna put it in this template folder. There is a special wizard folder here, and that's for templates prepared for use with the new map wizard, where you can change dimensions and everything like that. My template has not been prepared for that, so I should not put it in the wizard folder. So I'm just gonna save it. And I can just start a new copy of Camping Cartographer 3+. And I can start a new map. I want a dungeon map, but I want to pick a predefined template, because I want to pick the template that I just made. Next. It's loading the templates, and as we can see, here's my template. So this is the original drawing. You might also notice that when I save as a template, you are actually not starting to work on the template. It keeps the reference to the map I was working on. So if I want to go and work on the template itself, I should actually load the template. So I'm going to do that as well. And notice that I'm doing two very different things here. In this window, I'm opening the template using the standard file open dialog. Dungeons and template. And doing this means that I'm opening the template itself for editing, so I can change the template I'm using. In this second window, which I used new to create a new map from the template, I also chose the template, but I get a new map which is based on that template, and changing anything here won't touch the template at all. So now we are ready to basically go ahead and make some quick maps. I have everything in place, and yeah, we could just start with the doors. And for this first one, I'm going to emulate basically what I did earlier. So I'm gonna cut some holes in the walls using the wall cutter tool, the 5-foot wall cutter tool. Notice the doors also cut walls automatically. So if I just want a hole like this, I can use the cutting tool. Or if I want doors, they cut the wall themselves. Now, there is one question about where should I place the doors in these templates. Because you can see doors are by default placed basically on that edge line, which we basically covered up half with the screen because we wanted to place another tile next to it. And this has an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage here is that if I join it with another room that also have a door, there will be basically 2 half doors which will be joined together and merge. And that might be fine, but it might also be that this is not what you want, because that forces you to have doors on both sides of the drawing. So what you could do, I could actually move the door a little bit. So I'm gonna use the move command, gonna turn on auto, and I'm gonna select only the symbol. So I'm gonna combine it with entity type symbol. So only get the symbol. 3 draw, do it, and I'm gonna move the door out a bit. Okay, moving it like this has another advantage. Now the door only needs to exist in one tile at a time. You don't need to match it with a tile which has another half a door. But the problem now is that if you do match it with a tile which has a door in a position like this, it means that you basically will have a corridor with 2 doors with basically 1 foot spacing next to each other, which is kind of silly as well. But again, this isn't really, doesn't have anything to do with Camping Cartographer in itself. It's just more, what do you want from your tiles? How do you want them to behave? So I'm just gonna leave that door halfway away, and I leave that door down here just stuck in the middle. And I'm gonna leave these 2 open. And yeah, can just go in and draw myself some walls right now. So I can use the wall tool, wall current fill, current width. It's a nice tool. I already have the width at 2 and the twilight marble fill selected. They were set in the template, so they stay like that. And I can now draw a little bit of wall. I'm gonna turn back on snap. I can now draw a wall like this, and maybe a wall like this, and I want another door. Of course, interior doors like this in the middle of the tile doesn't have any of these weird problems. The problem with this door right now is that it does actually have a different kind of shadow than the rest. Maybe I should have fixed that in the template, but no time for that right now. And in this particular style, doors are on the symbols sheet. Okay, so I'm just gonna take this walls glow, I'm gonna copy it, gonna put it on the symbol sheet, and I'm gonna drop the existing ones. Okay, there we go. The doors have the same kind of glow as the walls. I could fine-tune that and work a little bit, perhaps have a different sheet for the doors, which is not uncommon in some styles, but I'm not going to use too much time for that right now. So I can drop down some symbols, snap off. Coffins, I mean, every cozy dungeon have a coffin or two, right? There are some people sleeping here. We need a storeroom with some barrels, a lot of barrels, and yeah, everyone loves treasure. Some barrels, some treasure. Perfect. Also on my other map, you might have seen that I had this little path going down here, so I'm just going to do a quick replicate of that one. I did that by creating a sheet for it. Yeah, actually, the sheet is still in the drawing. And I have an edge fade inner effect on that path sheet. That edge fade inner has a very, very low opacity, making whatever fill I choose mostly transparent. And it has a little bit of an edge fade. So I'm going to select this at current. I'm going to change my fill to something I don't like. A little bit of sand. Sand is horrible stuff, but okay. And I'm just going to use a smooth polygon. We can draw a little bit. This is basically the walkway where people walk. And for some reason, they are kind of avoiding one of those tiles. Wonder why people have such a weird path. And what I wonder even more, are the adventurers going to pick up on this? Or are they just going to ignore everything and just walk straight ahead as adventurers are bound to do? Let's see. I always forget that line width. That's my common problem. That's fine. It's easy enough to fix. See enough to fix, I say, and I don't actually set it to 0. There we go. We have these nice little paths. So oh, there we go. So I think this is kind of the first nice little tile. Ready to go, ready to use. And let's immediately go ahead and make the second tile. So I'm just gonna keep the first one open. I'm actually gonna save it. So documents, maps, and we're gonna save it as file 1. So I'm just gonna keep opening Campaign Cartographer 3+ windows at this point, because this means I can go back and look at other tiles very easily. So dungeons. Oops, not the side settings. Pick a predefined. Pick my tile. And this one, of course, I don't always need these tiles to be big, square things like big square floors. It could be a corridor. So for this one, I'm actually just going to erase the background on the wall, not the screen. I can use the corridor tool actually. Background should be... Yeah. Did I put as the background? It's the flagstone, of course. And the wall should be the tile light marble. Wall width 2 foot. Well, that matches my existing ones. Let's do it. And I can now, for example, do a corridor from here to here. And notice how useful these guidelines of mine are right now. They help me place the corridor exactly as needed. Perfect. This is now a corridor. Let's see, maybe I didn't stretch something far enough. You can see that small white glow. I think I should have made the corridor just a bit longer to avoid that problem. It's not really that big of a problem. I'm just gonna draw a new corridor right next to it. This should be enough to fix the problem. And let's put screen back on. And well, this one actually went a bit bad because, as you might have seen, what I did wrong. I did plan for 5 foot wide corridors, but this thing is 10 foot. So let me erase it. And thanks to everything being locked, I can just erase it. Okay, it's the extra one up here. It's gone. It's a bit extra entity. That. And let me try again. Corridor. This time, 5 foot corridor. So, drawing the corridor. We can actually make it a bit more tricky if we want to. Just to make the adventurers wonder what is going on here. There we go. And we have another dungeon tile. All done with a corridor. Of course, now you can see what I was talking about, that 5 foot can get a little bit small. So we can do something about that as well, of course. The corridor tools in Camping Cartographer 3 Plus has some interesting options. So I can just delete this one again. It's fun drawing corridors, right? So I'm just gonna start again. And I'm gonna start with a 5 foot. But if I hold down Shift, I can actually make the corridor wider. Did I make it maybe a bit too wide? You didn't like that. I simply don't have enough space to work with here. I don't think I should make it quite that wide. The intention was making it 10 foot wide. Not okay. I think I'm gonna explain this weird little line you are seeing here. Because some of these lines right here are what we are calling basically meter lines. A meter is basically where you have corners that join each other, and what happens here is that these thick walls join each other on a very small corner, which tends to make the software trying to make these corners pretty, and you get an effect like this, where the tighter the corner, the further away this meter goes from the actual nodes that make it up. So let's have a look at the nodes. I think I'm gonna hide everything here but my wall sheet, and see if we can do something to fix up these a little bit. Often it's enough just to grab the node deletion tool and just delete. Let's see, it can be a bit difficult to see exactly where the node is. One way of doing that to easier do it is just make this cursor bigger. You can see when I click the tool, you can see I have a little box on my cursor. It's quite tiny. Then can go to Tools option, pick Cursor Aperture, and let's quadruple it in size. Then this little tool right here. So you can see I removed some of the problematic nodes from the wall. Still need to fix the wall a little bit because it has to actually match the floor below. But if I now turn everything back on, show all, you can see that the floor is only basically supposed to have a corner here. So let me take the move node and I'm gonna move this node. Oh, sorry, not move. I'm gonna add a node right here. And I'm gonna actually turn off snap. I'm just gonna place this like this. And there we go. All fixed up. So I kind of brute forced it a little bit by just deleting the node rather brutally and just adding a few extra nodes. So this is how simple it is to actually fix these problems in many cases. And I'm not going to do too much more with this one. Let's throw in some fungi perhaps. Fungi is always fine. And for some unexplained reason, there is a rowboat in the middle of the corridor. Because again, this is going to make the adventurers really curious what is happening here. So this is my second tile. Let me just save it. And of course, I could sit here all day and make tiles. Making tiles obviously takes time. So I don't think you want to sit here for a lot of hours just watching me make tiles. So let's do the final steps. And that is exporting or printing these guys. I don't have a webcam that is very well set up to show my assembling them on print right now. So I think I'm going for the image export option and exporting them to images and just assemble them in another program or in Campaign Cartographer itself actually. So I'm just going to do a save as, but first I'm going to hide my guide layer. We don't want my guides to make problems. And another reason for why I wanted these glowy shadows instead of casting shadows is because that when you rotate these pieces, it's very important that shadows seem consistent. If I have shadows cast at, for example, a 30-degree angle in relation to the drawing, well, then I can't really rotate them because things won't actually fit. And that's quite bad. It looks weird, at least. Having these glowy kinds of shadows means that you can rotate it as much as you want to. And from my poll a little while ago, I see that 86% of you do not think the adventurers pick up on this. So, none of you have any faith in these guys, huh? Well, I can understand that. And so, yeah, let's go to actually export the image. I hid the, oh, it's changed, 70%. Somebody has faith. Okay, well and good. Well, let me finish my exporting. I'm being side-railed a little bit here. So I have hidden the the guidelines. So I just go to File, Save As, and I'm gonna do a rectangular. Actually, I don't need to do a rectangular section because I have my map border in place. So I'm just going to do a PNG bitmap file. And the important thing here is that all are the same size. For simplicity and quickness, I'm gonna export them at, well, let's call it an even 1000 pixels. 1000 pixels may be a bit coarse to see the details of the symbols if you zoom in, but that's fine. I have restrict image to map border on, which is important. And we're just gonna save this one. Okay, and we're gonna do the same with this one. I'm gonna hide the guidelines. And going to, I was just thinking about this grid. You might see that the grid is filling the map. What I had originally made is, as you can see, the grid is hidden below the walls and symbols, but I didn't really prepare for the event where I wouldn't have a background on the entire map. But this can quickly be fixed, really. Let me just go to the background and just do a solid white fill. Oh, actually, I was thinking a bit too quickly. If I draw a solid white fill, I will actually fill. I won't get above the grid because the grid should be above the background, obviously. So I could, well, it's not that difficult to actually just draw them manually. Just do that quick enough. And you see, I always forget to change the line width. It's a curse of mine. I do it all the time when I'm mapping as well. And but again, it's so quick to fix. And of course, it shouldn't be on the background. It should be actually, yeah, it could be on the floor's mask sheet, actually, I think. Let's put it on the floor's mask sheet. So let's move it and select this one and floor's mask. That's a nice sheet. Doing the same again. Just click there. You can see I'm just doing this rather brutally and quickly. I'm not trying to make an exact match. That could come back to bite me later if I want to actually change some of the shapes, but I'm not going to do that, so this is fine. Save it and save as again PNG bitmap file. Since I have two different instances of Campaign Cartographer open, the settings I made in the other instance won't be remembered, of course. So I have to do it like this. And I now have two different tiles. And let's just start up another copy of Campaign Cartographer again. I just love starting up copies of Campaign Cartographer. This time I just want a new blank dungeon map. So, dungeons, set settings myself. And the dungeon style I've been using is the symbol set 2, but you can do this with any style, obviously. My tiles are 45, so I'm making a small dungeon by 200, maybe a bit small, 300 by 300. So, and we can just save it as dungeon. And what I can do now is that I can click the open symbol catalog. I find my folder with the PNGs in them. It should be right there. Let's just click one of them. And my tiles appear as symbols. Now, Sue did ask one very important question in chat, which I really didn't take the time to consider too much, because you will see that there will be a little bit of a clash when I'm putting these together. I made the dungeon way bigger than I needed to fit these ones, but that's okay. Now I can just plop this down. I can rotate it like this. Let's see. My handling point might not be the best, as you might have seen. So I think we should actually address that immediately. Because when I'm opening the symbols like this, Campaign Cartographer don't really know the scale of anything. It's just using the scale, and I exported these images at 1000 pixels, and that's not going to necessarily fit perfectly with the scale of the map as it is. So I think I'm actually just going to fix something. It doesn't have a transparent background either. I'm not going to dig into that right now because you need a separate program to do that. But after clicking once on every symbol, they are here in the symbol manager. I can now go into this and let's just open it, edit it. This last part is of course only important if I'm using it inside Campaign Cartographer. If I had already printed it, this wouldn't really be an issue, and in an other image editor you would just stick with the size of the image and be happy. But in Campaign Cartographer, things need to be in scale to work properly. So what are the scale of this image? Let me try to check the distance. So the distance of this image is basically 25, but it's supposed to be 45. So we need to scale it. Okay. So I got to the symbol manager and I'm just gonna pick this one, first one. I don't think I can, I can scale multiple actually. And I'm actually not sure if I can input a calculation in this dialog, because it is 25 and it's supposed to be 45. I'm not sure if this will work. This will, we'll see in just a second. And let's so just list info distance. The symbol manager first. Thank you. And select it, edit, and then do info distance. $1,105. Yeah, that did not work too well. Now, then I can just delete them from drawing. This will delete the one I messed up. And I'm actually just going back to the symbol catalog, clicking on them and importing them again. I can now go here. Okay, let's do this the other way then. Not options, thank you. Scale. We need a calculator. I know that they are 25, but I want them to be 45. So calculation for this is 45 divided by 25, so 1.8. So I should scale them by 1.8. Okay, symbol manager. Let's check my work, that I'm happy with that. And it's now 45. So notice it might be slightly approximate, and that's because maybe I didn't choose the best size when actually exporting the image, but because you can see right here, you can see my crosshairs is perfectly on the edge right here, but it's not 100% perfect here. So I might need to do a little bit more fine tuning, but I'm not going to do that right now. That's doesn't really help too much for the stream itself. But the size should then be fine. And I can actually now start using these symbols. I might want to do one more thing. I might want to change where the origin is, because it was not in the best place actually. So yeah, I actually have to edit it, and I can just do draw, and now sorry, it's view, change, move origin, and I'm actually going to just set the origin actually in the exact middle of it. That sounds good to me, right? This is an image, so I don't have precision tools, so you have to do it by eye. But I'm gonna say that this is fine. Yes, and symbol manager. So you can see it's a little bit of work if I want to have them as proper symbols. But again, most probably you are doing this because you want to print them, or you're doing something else with them, so you don't actually need to have it perfectly centered anyway. So move origin, and if you see what I'm doing here, it might be difficult to see the center of this image, but I know that this is the top center and this is the left center. So I'm not using the centers of my crosshairs at all to align. I'm just looking at the sides where they fit the corridors. Okay, this is good enough for us right now. So I can now just turn on snap and place down. And as you can see, they align up nicely. I can now turn this around. There is a very, very small discrepancy, and that's, as I showed you, the image has a it's slightly too small actually. But I can now rotate it as I want to, and yeah, basically slap down. This one doesn't have a transparent background, so I do need to make that if I want to. And this corridor piece have a small problem as well. One thing Sue mentioned you might want to do is actually having the outer outer walls on it, so when it adjoins to another piece you actually get the full width wall. So that's one thing you might want to do. So you get the wide wall. You can see here this white little strip here is because the image size I talked about. And the other thing is, of course, this cutout for a door right here is 5 foot wide. This one is 5 foot from the center of the wall to the center of the wall. So this corridor piece isn't made perfectly to fit. If I had made it perfectly to fit, I should actually have put the walls on the outside of this 5 foot and not just taken the very quick approach I did with the corridor tool. Or at least I should have made the corridor a bit wider. Because when you draw something in Campaign Cartographer with walls, when I draw something, when I draw a corridor, if I draw a corridor like this in Campaign Cartographer, and that's 10 feet wide, and if I have 2 foot wide walls on that one, that means that the walls are going to go 1 foot outside and 1 foot inside, like this. So this 10 foot corridor is actually 8 foot wide. So if I wanted the gap here, this gap to be exactly 5 foot, then as Sue has already commented, I would need to make this a 7 foot wide corridor, because when you then have the walls that stick 1 foot in on each side, that's 5 foot left for the corridor. So that's also one of the things you need to think about when making things like dungeon tiles. You need to think about how does things line up. Campaign Cartographer doesn't magically understand that a corridor with wide walls like this should line up to a 5 foot wide hole, and we get this undesirable result. But we are going long in time here, so I hope this was a useful stream for you guys. Are there any last minute questions about these things before I leave you? I'll just give you a minute before I end this to ask your final questions. And if you don't have anything right now, remember I'm hanging around in the forums quite a lot, so you'll find me in the forums. Just come by, drop a question. I'm always happy to give you and help you and answer your questions in the forum. So one thing I can mention, of course, is that in this case, I did choose to just import the entire thing as an image and use that as a symbol in Campaign Cartographer 3+. I could, of course, have chosen to import the entities themselves into the symbol, so that you actually had symbols where you could change the walls and things inside the symbols when placing them, but doing that requires, I think, a live stream of their own just to demonstrate how I would do that, but that's quite possible. They don't have to be imported as images as I did right now. So yeah, it seems like there are no questions. So all I want to do then is just tell you that this is, as I understood it from Ralph, the last live stream before the holidays. So I'm just wishing you all the best for the holidays. Have a Merry Christmas, or best of whatever you might observe in this time, and have good time, good holiday, and I'll be seeing you guys later.